Today we're going to hear some helpful advice from a seasoned gardener as we wind down our gardens for this year and anticipate putting in a garden for next year. Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today we're continuing in our Gardening with Carl series as we join Carl on his front porch as he reflects on some helpful tips that we should consider as we clean up our summer garden, perhaps tend to a fall garden, and as we settle in for the cooler months ahead and anticipate our plans for our spring garden to come. So let's join Carl now on his front porch as he shares some helpful advice.
I want to share with you a few moments how I like to end my summer garden. It's a good time, and you should. It really is important to go out in your garden after you've finished harvesting everything and clean it up. You don't want to leave things lying around. You don't want to leave old plants lingering there, because what happens is that any disease factors that are still remaining in any of those plants is going to merely multiply even during the winter there in your garden. So you want to get rid of everything. You want to get rid of all of the plant life, dead or alive, green or brown, and you also want, if you have utensils like this to support your tomatoes, like I do. I have this concrete wire, and several of you that I know, you have these to support your tomatoes. You may have other supports, but these supports need to be sanitized at the end of the season. And one way to do it is to use Clorox or bleach. You can put it into a spray bottle like this and just simply spray, and then you can store these after doing this. Make sure that you clear it of any growth, any old thing that's clinging to the wire, and sanitize these. Don't leave them out there, because even though they're rusty, they will have residual disease on them. The same thing with especially vine plants like watermelons and squash and cantaloupe and things like that. You want to make sure that all of that plant life is out of your garden, because you have unique types of things that bugs and beetles and fungal and whatever can stay there in your garden and just keep proliferating. So it's very important to clean up your garden at the end of the season. I want to talk to you for a few moments about some other things you can be doing at this time of the year that are beneficial to your garden. One of the things that you want to be sure to do is store your seed in a nice cold place. I store my seed in a small container where all of my seed packs are in this container that I close. It's kind of like one of these plastic containers, and I store it in the refrigerator. Now, some people put it in freezers, but I find the refrigerator is plenty adequate. It represents a mild, cold winter, and it's healthy for the seed to go through that, and it will keep the seed nice and virile. I also find that it's a good time to begin to search for good seed sources. We have our favorite seed sources that we might rely on and that we might just go back to, but there's always the possibility of discovering new and exciting varieties, new and exciting places that are more economical, and just all of those factors that relate to making a decision on buying your seeds. It's also a good time to get together with other people who love to garden and talk to them about their garden. You can ask them questions like, did you grow tomatoes this year? And tell me about the tomatoes you grew. What were your favorites? and you'll begin to learn things about people and their choices and why they choose, and we all sort of have the same taste when it comes to that which really tastes good and that which is tasteless. Tomatoes is a good example. And I like to ask people who I find love to garden and especially grow tomatoes, what's your favorite? And you'll hear such things as Cherokee Purple, Brandywine, Kellogg's Breakfast, Black Creme. You'll hear about these favorite heirlooms. There's even one called Mortgage Lifter. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it was grown by a man, I think he lived in Kentucky, and he became famous with his heirloom tomato. And do you know that he would charge $1 per plant? This was back in the 1930s, and that would be like $10 a plant today. But he would charge $1 a plant, and people would come from all over to buy his plants. And you know why he called it Mortgage Lifter? Because selling those plants paid off his house. So that's a very famous tomato, and it's a very good one. I've grown it in the past. But you will find it's not only interesting and entertaining, but talk with your friends who are gardeners and find out things like that, because you might want to try some of these varieties of tomatoes that other people think are the best, as well as stick with your own. It's also a good time to decide what didn't do very well. In my garden this year, I had a few varieties that I was very disappointed in. I had never grown them before, but I tried them out because the wonderful things that were said in the seed catalog didn't quite bear out. So what you're looking for in a good tomato is, first of all, taste. And secondly, maybe disease resistance. That's important, but you're going to find that if you really concentrate on heirlooms, which is a good idea, heirlooms will not have quite the disease resistance because many of the hybrids have been bred specifically to fight disease, but they sacrifice taste. Taste is not the most important thing in commercial tomatoes because it's the way they appear and how long they last on the shelf. My very favorite tomato is Cherokee Purple, and Cherokee Purple will not last long on the shelf. In fact, if I pick it ripe, bring it into the house and set it somewhere, I know that within a couple of days it's going to begin to deteriorate. But it's the most delicious tomato for me in the whole thing. Another good thing about if you can go ahead and think in terms of starting your plants and getting your equipment ready for the spring. Have a small place where you can start your own plants. You can have a couple of 4-foot fluorescent bulbs, and you can design this and make it and put it in a place that's inconspicuous and grow your own plants. It's a wonderful idea. I want to share with you something that's got a lot of us excited, and that is the potential of growing microgreens. Have you ever heard of microgreens? Microgreens are a step beyond sprouts. You know, for many years we have sprouted alfalfa seed, we've sprouted broccoli seed, and we've been told that those sprouts are quite a few times more nutritious than the mature plant. Well, I want to tell you something interesting about microgreens. They've discovered that microgreens are just beyond sprouts where you have the leaf structure already beginning to develop. And what they've discovered is that is the optimum time if you really are looking for nutrition. Take, for instance, the red cabbage. Red cabbage, even mature, is considered 8 times more nutritious than its green cousin. Red cabbage is one of the most nutritious of all vegetables. But when you take red cabbage and grow it as a microgreen, it has one of the highest nutrient factors of any plant ever measured. You have some other things that are very interesting and wonderful about microgreens. You can grow, for instance, sunflower seed. And sunflower seed happens to develop a microgreen that is very mellow and tasty, almost buttery in its texture. And when you grow it and combine it with your salads, your little microgreen salads, or you can mix it in with regular salads, it just blends so well with other things. Now here's the other advantage of microgreens. It doesn't take space. You can do it on one of those racks that's 4 feet long and 6 feet high, that has maybe 6 shelves on it. You can stack on that about 12 trays in which you can grow your microgreens. Those microgreens, after you have planted your seed, will be ready for harvest anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. So you sense that it's something that's very fast, it's not simple, it doesn't take much space, and if you have a little room in your basement or somewhere in the house or in the back room, you could just have that one little area and begin to experiment with microgreens. A lot of material about microgreens on the internet. I have books on microgreens, and you can find books in Amazon books that just are devoted to the development of microgreens. Another thing I want to encourage you to do is do some research and explore the possibilities of biochar. Now, biochar in some sectors is debatable, but it is an absolute truth and a rather astounding thing that the most fertile soil in the world that's ever been discovered was in South America, in the Amazon Delta basin, where the Indians many years ago, 2,000 years ago, would burn their scraps and their wood and so forth, and somehow it would reach a point where they would put it out and it would create charcoal. And they found places where they would just simply put it in their garden, and they now find that they can grow things in that particular place where that biochar is, that things will actually mature twice as fast as in any other medium. So there's been a lot of experimentation with biochar, adding it to compost and other things, and you might want to do a little bit of exploring. It's a fascinating subject and really a lot of fun to just Google what's biochar, how do you make biochar, what equipment do you need to make biochar. You can actually make biochar without any equipment by the way that where you burn it, where you burn the wood. So maybe try looking into that, and I think you'll find it very interesting. Another thing that I want to encourage you to do, if you really are serious about making your garden efficient in its production, is study square foot gardening. The whole philosophy behind square foot gardening was invented by a man named Bartholomew, who happened to be an engineer. And when he retired, he thought, I'm a man who has been busy all my life. I love to garden, but I don't like the way everybody gardens. People waste so much space. They waste the way they garden, and it's just not very practical. This man was an engineer, and he really believed in things being practical and things making sense. And so he devised what he calls the square foot gardening idea, where the most important concept is don't grow anything unless when it's harvestable, that at that time you're going to harvest it and eat it. So what does he say? He says, don't grow 50 cabbage heads that will reach a optimum maturity when you should pick it, and you can't use the 50. You can only use 3 or 4. He says, grow a cabbage head, grow a broccoli head, grow some kale, grow some carrots, grow some beets, grow some onions, but grow them in these square foot arrangements that you can easily see in his material, and always plant with the harvest time in mind, so that when you harvest it, you can go out into your garden and harvest a couple of onions, a couple of carrots, a couple of beets maybe, and they're not overripe and past their optimum nutrient value. They're at their optimum stage. That's what square foot gardening is all about. So it makes sense, it's practical, it's extremely economical, because you will find that if you master it, that you can have square foot gardening all year long, and it will cut your grocery bill much more than in half. So study square foot gardening. The other thing is, I showed you the compost bins that I have constructed, and if you begin to investigate compost on the internet and on YouTube, there are a number of people that are showing you how that you can easily make compost without a stall, without the traditional big compost pile, but you can just make a little sort of teepee heap out in the backyard, and every day just go out there with your rake and kind of stir it and water it. And within 3 weeks, you'll have nice, ripe compost. It won't be a lot, but it will be very usable and very good and very cheap. I wanted to also share with you something else that you can get that will really, really be a help to you. As many of you know, during the summer, we fight with bugs and beetles and worms that infest our plants, and they are really a headache. There's nothing worse than eating a delicious meal of greens and look down and see a worm that has been cooked right with your greens. You know how I feel about that. You know how I feel about that. And so row cover is a very handy thing to protect your plants during the summer and the winter. Now in the summer, the row cover is light enough that you can actually spread it over your plants and it won't in any way impede their growth or their health, but it will protect them from the butterflies that lay the eggs that grow into worms on your plants. I use them all summer long on my cruciferous vegetables so that I don't have worms. In the wintertime, they especially come in handy because they protect from cold. One layer of, it depends on how thick the row cover is. You can get it in various thicknesses, but you can buy a row cover that will actually, one layer will protect it down to as much as 6 degrees. In other words, if you have a frost, and you have a row cover on there that will protect you 6 degrees, you can afford for it to go down to 26 degrees. Now, the nice thing about it is that people who use row covers will sometimes put 2 and 3 and 4 layers. And I have actually done that. I have saved all of my winter garden one time when it got down to 2 degrees Fahrenheit by placing 3 layers of row cover on all of my plants. I did not lose one plant. And that's remarkable. So row cover is very worth the price because you can use it over and over and over, and it seldom wears out, except once in a while you might split it here and there. Another thing I want to encourage some of you to do, and you might be able to do this, is consider the possibility of constructing a type of cover like a hoop house. Most all of you know what a hoop house is. It's generally an oval-shaped structure in which you can put plastic on that will protect your plants, and you can make these hoop houses from very cheap to very expensive. There are hoop houses that are worth up to $20,000, but then there are hoop houses that won't cost you much more than $400 or $500 to build, that are 80 feet long and will support a whole winter garden. There are pipe benders. You can use PVC pipe even to make these. I had a hoop house that I made out of the smallest, well, it wasn't the smallest, it was a 1/2 inch PVC that I made hoops out of and was 12 feet wide and about 40 feet long, and I grew a lot of things in there. So I mean, you can make a variety of these. You can find all kinds of information on the internet, and I have a pipe bender in case anyone wants to use it, where you can make 20-foot wide ones, and I've been able to help people build these in quite a few instances. But a hoop house will really improve your ability to grow things, especially in the winter. In the summertime, you have a lot of heat in a hoop house, so what do? Well, you grow heat-loving vegetables like sweet potatoes. One year I grew a whole row, 80-foot long, of sweet potatoes, and they thrived in that 100-degree temperature, and it made them sweeter for some reason. And not only that, they were huge. I had sweet potatoes that were so large that when I placed a picture of them on Facebook, a good friend of mine who is a doctor, he said, "Where'd you get that kidney? Where did you get that gallbladder?" He was a surgeon. He knew what they looked like. And those beautiful red sweet potatoes were so large. One of them weighed 8 pounds. And do you know, I figured that they probably would be kind of porous or at least fibrous all the way through. They weren't. They were just as sweet in the middle and all through as a small sweet potato. So in a warm hoop house, all summer long, you can grow sweet potatoes, you can grow okra, you can grow other things that love heat, and they thrive in the warmth of a hoop house in the summer. So I just wanted you to be aware that you can consider some of these things in your future and as you develop this. Now there's one final thing that I want to say. Many of you, like me, are Christians. We have a devout belief that what we see in our world today is very clearly a sign that we're nearing, according to the Bible, the time of what we call the end of this world. But there's something wonderful that we look forward to, not the end of the world, but the coming of Jesus. We're told in the Bible that there's going to be a time of trouble, such as never before, and it seems to me that people are wise, if they take all of this seriously, to consider the importance of gardening. I incorporate my gardening experience very deeply within my faith that I'm living in the last days. I want to live healthfully, as optimally as I can, and I also want to be able, when the time of trouble comes, where the Bible says we can neither buy nor sell, I'll have my food, maybe. It may be that I won't be where my favorite garden is. I might be somewhere in hiding. I don't know. But then maybe microgreens would come in handy. I think we're learning things today that will stand us in good stead if we take seriously the idea of really learning how to do it well. And that's what we're all about in this series of Gardening with Carl and with Pastor Jeremy. We're learning to garden the best we can and learning, studying, praying together. And hopefully this will be not only an experience of joy and recreation, but will draw us much closer to our Creator God. Thank you for being with me today.
Well, I hope you found today's presentation inspiring and helpful, and if so, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel. If you'd like to be notified of future presentations when they're released, please hit that bell icon and consider leaving us a comment and let us hear from you. Please, I hope you'll join us next time as together we explore greener pastures.